Smith's short and troubled life came to a tragic end in a prison cell. Suicide that could have been stopped.
Convicted Cleveland kidnapper Ariel Castro has been found dead in his jail cell in Ohio.
A suicide attempt in Tihar jail. A woman inmate has, in fact, hanged herself, and she was rushed to Deen Dayal Upadhyay Hospital, where she was declared dead. The attempt.
Imagine being stuck in a cell for the majority of the day with very little human contact. What would you do?
By tying a strip of bedsheet to the metal covering of his cell's smoke detector. He had gone unmonitored for hours behind a solid steel door in the maximum security prison's notorious 10 block.
According to the World Health Organization, suicide is the most common cause of death in correctional settings. Why is it that worldwide, within these settings, there is such a struggle to prevent inmate suicide? Hopelessness, isolation, loneliness. With little or no chance for parole, many inmates resort to suicide as their way out of prison misery. Nearly half of jail suicides occur during the first week of custody. The general strain theory can explain this statistic. The recently sentenced inmates are presented with negative stimuli due to their changed environment. They are human. They have wants and needs, but have no ability to achieve them. The inmates feel strained, and for them, suicide is the way out. Without the ease of access to drugs, weapons, or willing assistance, inmates often resort to painful methods of ending their lives. The most common method is hanging or strangulation, typically from the window bars of their cell. Prisoners learn unique suicide techniques from watching the other inmates engage in self-harming behaviors, thus reinforcing the social learning theory. The prisoners drink cleaning fluid and rubbing alcohol. They eat mice pellets, anything that they think will help them die. Mentally ill inmates are at high risk of suicide. Despite the proper treatment that these individuals need, many correctional facilities do not have access to adequate mental health staff. Due to the limited internal mental health resources, mentally ill prisoners usually do not receive necessary treatment to prevent their suicidal thoughts. These mentally ill inmates do not have the ability to think rationally. The rational choice theory applies here. These individuals have trouble applying the pros and cons to the situation, thus they act on impulse. These impulse suicides make the prevention tactics that prisons prepare for completely irrelevant. Jails and prisons consist of all different groups of violent and troubled individuals: male, female, black, white, young, and old. Some of these categories of prisoners are more likely to be prone to suicide than others. For example, violent offenders have suicide rates over twice as high as those of non-violent offenders. White jail inmates are 6 times more likely to commit suicide than black inmates, and 3 times more likely than Hispanic inmates. Gender is also a factor. Sentenced male prisoners have a rate of almost 6 times the rate of males out of prison in the general population, as stated by the World Health Organization. Although men are more likely to attempt suicide in prison, women are more likely to deliberately harm themselves. A study conducted in the United Kingdom found that 5 to 6% of male prisoners and 20 to 24% of female prisoners deliberately harm themselves every year. For these incarcerated women, self-harming is frequently the single element of their lives where they can exert some type of control. In many prisons, suicide prevention tactics are not successful because the staff is ill-prepared to deal with the situation. According to the U.S. Marshals Department of Justice, many jails do not provide suicide prevention planning. These facilities that are not equipped to deal with suicide prevention resort to placing the at-risk prisoner in an isolation cell. The already depressed prisoners are then forced to sit alone in a cell for 23 hours a day. Several researchers have indicated a positive relationship between confinement and isolation and suicide. All people, even prisoners, need periodic human contact. When left alone, these at-risk prisoners are more likely to attempt suicide. Despite the countless prison suicides we hear about through various forms of media, suicide rates for inmates has actually decreased drastically in recent years. Hopefully, with the right prevention programs, rates will continue to decline in the future.